Hey guys, this is God of Politics. We'll go back to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I am going to be doing my updated 2022 gubernatorial elections prediction video. We have 36 races. Some of them are very competitive, some of them are very safe, some of them the Democrats may do better than you expect, some of them the Republicans may do better than you expect. This is just my prediction for a lot of competitive races. A lot of them are going to be tilts, a lot of them could still go either way. A lot of them we still have candidates to be decided for who's going to be running for either party. There are a lot of things still to be decided, but we can get right into them at the moment. We're starting off with these safe Republican states. So for the safe Republican states, we can first start off with the state of Alaska. We can do the state of Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma. I'm also going to put Texas as a safe Republican state. I think Beto O'Rourke could take it down below 10 percentage points, but as of now, I think that given all the circumstances, Greg Abbott won by more than 10 percentage points in 2018, which is a better year than what 2022 is going to be for Democrats. You've also got the fact that Beto O'Rourke is just not the best candidate. He's not what he was in 2018, and Greg Abbott is not the worst candidate. But he does have, of course, good fundraising numbers, and I think he's going to be in a pretty strong position for re-election, winning by over 10 percentage points. But I wouldn't be surprised if it went under 10 percentage points. Arkansas is another state. Iowa, I think, with Kim Reynolds, also could go by over 10 percentage points. This is a state where you've got a popular Republican governor in a state that is trending towards the Republicans. Similar to Ohio, which I think is going to go by over 10 percentage points, Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina are also safe Republican states here. And I do believe that is all of them. There's a couple of states who, where the Republicans would tend to win by a safe margin, which would notably be Kansas, but they're not winning by a safe margin, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But for the Democrats, I do believe California is a safe Democratic state. Hawaii is safe. Illinois, New York. New York's not going to be competitive. People should not say that. It won't be competitive. So I'm going to put it as safe, as well as actually two states I forgot, Vermont and New Hampshire. Those are both going to be safe for the Republicans, of course. Phil Scott in Vermont and Chris Sununu in New Hampshire. Massachusetts is going to be safe for the Democrats. Rhode Island is going to be safe for the Democrats as well. And so I believe that is all of the safe states, as well as Maryland. Maryland is the final state. Republicans did not nominate the best candidate there. She is the candidate they nominated. He is no Larry Hogan there, and they're going to end up losing that race there. They ended up nominating the candidate Dan Cox, who is obviously not the best candidate for this race. Democrats are nominating, a decent candidate, and this race is not going to be competitive like it was in years past. But those are all of the safe states. Democrats are at 13, Republicans are at 23. Moving on to the likely margin states, there are a few of these. I am first going to the state of Florida, which I believe is a likely margin state. Florida is the state where you have, of course, Ron DeSantis. He's got huge fundraising numbers. He's got this national profile now. You have the not best Democratic candidate running in Charlie Crist. And you've just got a state where Republicans have had everything going right for them lately, and that's going to lead to a pretty strong and sizable victory in the gubernatorial race for Ron DeSantis. I'm also going to put... Actually, I believe that is the only likely margin state for the Republicans. Democrats will have the state of Colorado, I believe, is going to be a likely margin state. You've got Jared Polis here, who has actually been pretty popular as governor, especially with his COVID policies. They did get a lot of independents on board with him, and even some Republicans, and he's been a pretty popular governor. I think he's going to have a pretty good re-election campaign that's going to give him a pretty sizable amount of victory. I wouldn't actually be surprised if he won by over 10 percentage points here, but of course, I'm going to err on the side of it being more competitive, and so for now, I'm going to put it as more of a likely margin. Connecticut, I'm also going to put as a likely margin. Connecticut's tended to have more competitive gubernatorial elections in the past, and I think 2022 will be no different to that. Ned Lamont is not really the best candidate, but he's also not the worst candidate, and while the Republicans have had some success, they can have success at the state legislative level in 2022. They can flip one of the House seats. They can get this race competitive. I don't think they're going to do well enough to win a lot of those races. They're not going to win the gubernatorial race. They're not going to win the state state legislature, I don't think. But at the end of the day, I do think that this is a race that will be below 10 percentage points when it is all said and done. But those are all of the likely margin states, meaning we have 11 states that I believe will be within 5 percentage points, and it'll probably be lower than that when it's all said and done. But this far out from an election, we want to consider a lot more possibilities. There's a lot more circumstances to consider, and that does increase the competitiveness of some of these races, and you will see it when I get into these. So the lean margin states for the Republicans first, I'm going to put Georgia as a lean margin state. This is a race where you've got Brian Kemp, who is the current governor, who did very well in his primary, going up against Stacey Abrams for the Republicans. And, he is a pretty decent candidate here. He's been doing better in the polls than Herschel Walker has. And while I think that the gap between them will narrow over time, he'll actually win by a pretty sizable amount when it's all said and done. He's pretty much led in every single poll, and that is very good if you're a Republican. He's been leading by 5 points in Insider Advantage, which is not the worst poll, 1 point in Survey USA, which, overestimates Democrats a lot. He was winning by 2 points in Change Research, which tend to overestimate Democrats as well. So he's in a pretty solid position, and I think that he will end up winning by a lean margin. I'm also actually going to put Wisconsin as a lean Democratic state. Tony Evers is really not the most popular Democratic candidate here. While he is an incumbent, I think that the strength of the year that 2022 is going to be for the Republicans is going to push whoever the Republican candidate ends up being over the line. Now, there's been a lot of drama here. Most people accepted that it would be Rebecca Kleefisch, but with the Trump endorsement of Tim Michels, who's pretty much one of the only figures to have endorsed him, pretty much every state representative who did endorse Rebecca Kleefisch, as well as many other figures, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, lots of other candidates here. But this primary seems to be competitive all of a sudden, and it should be very, very interesting. But when it's all said and done, moving on to a general election, I think that the Republicans are in a pretty strong position here. Wisconsin is the state I think the Republicans are going to do quite well in the future, and that makes this race lean Republican. I'm also going to put Kansas as a lean Republican state for now. Kansas is a race where you do actually have a Democratic incumbent in a state where the Republicans are doing quite well at the federal level here, and pretty well at the state level too. I mean, they have a supermajority in this Kansas legislature here, but a lot of these rating services rated it as toss-up. 2 of them rated as lean Republican as a flip. We've only had a couple of polls, and they have shown it as a competitive race here. And while I do think it is going to be a competitive race, I think that when it's all said and done, the Republicans are going to end up winning it by a lean margin. Now, for the Democrats, I do think there are a couple of races where they are going to win it by a lean margin. First is the state of Oregon, which is actually a very, very interesting race here. Oregon is a pretty much 3-way race. You've got 3 candidates who are actually pretty much all viable in here. If we look at the polls, we can see 3 candidates are all within 6, 7, 8 percentage points of each other here, and that is going to make for a very interesting race. You have Betsy Johnson here, the independent, formerly a Democrat, running against the majority and minority leaders of the Oregon House of Representatives, Tina Kotek being the speaker, Christine Drazan being the minority leader here. And so that's going to make for a very competitive race, which I think the Republicans could actually win if they run a good campaign, if they have a good year, if the independent takes up enough votes from them. But as of now, I am going to be more cautious. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say the Republicans are going to win it. I'm going to put it as lean Democrat. I'm also going to put the state of Michigan as a lean Democratic state. This is a state where Democrats actually may have somewhat of a bright spot, where overall for the nationwide races, they're probably not going to do that well in most races around the country. But you do have Gretchen Whitmer here against probably Tudor Dixon. I'm actually recording this before the primary. The primary has now happened. But I do think that Gretchen Whitmer is a pretty decent candidate. She won by a lot in 2018, and Michigan is a state that Democrats can do quite well in, and so I think that she probably will end up winning by a lean margin. Similar thing in Minnesota. I actually could put this as a tilt margin. I think that this is really on the cusp of tilt and lean, probably by around 2 percentage points, which is what I categorize tilt and lean as. 0 to 2 for tilt, 2 to 5 for lean, 5 to 10 for likely, 10 plus for safe. But as we can see here, we've only had a few polls. Tim Walz is winning narrowly in them, and most rating services actually have it as likely or lean, which I think is fair. But I think that it is going to be more competitive than that at the end of the day, and so I am putting it as lean, but it also could very well be tilt. And so that is all of the lean margin states here. We've got 5 that I am saying will be within 2 percentage points here. And we can start off first with Nevada and Arizona, which I am putting both as tilt. Nevada, you've got Joe Lombardo here. He's a pretty good candidate. He is the Clark County Sheriff, elected on a nonpartisan ballot, now running as a Republican for governor. I think he's a pretty decent candidate. He had a pretty strong primary showing. He is a pretty good candidate on the issues in terms of electability purposes, and I think at the end of the day he's going to have a pretty good shot at winning. And right now I am saying it is still Republican. I think Republicans are going to have a good year in Nevada. I made a video about it, and I think that starts with the gubernatorial race. Arizona is another state where I think the Republicans have very good opportunities to do well. Whether they take those opportunities is a different question. Now, again, I am making this video before the primary. I predicted that Kari Lake would be the candidate for the Republicans. Whether that ends up happening is another question. But for me, nominating Kari Lake would really be a waste of an opportunity. I think that Arizona does have the potential to be pretty good and solid for the Republican Party, but she is not a good candidate. She's already said she's not going to pivot for a general election, and if that is the case, that is not going to be good for the Arizona Republicans, and that could actually lead to this race being won by Hobbs, the Democrat who is the current Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, and she's not the best candidate, but the Republican candidate is much, much worse. But as of now, I do think Republicans are still slightly favored here. Now, I am going to put New Mexico as a tilt Democratic state. I actually had this as tilt Republican in my last prediction. I think Democrats are in a slightly better position nationwide than they were a couple of months ago when I made my last prediction in May. It is now the first couple of days of August here, but I think Republicans do certainly have a shot to win this. You've got Mark Ronchetti running in this race who, did very well in a Senate election in 2020. He ran, I think, 5-6 points ahead of Trump, and that's a federal race. This is a gubernatorial race where Republicans have had strength in before. They won in both 2010 and 2014 here, and so you have had some polls that have shown Republicans winning here, and of course you can't trust the polls too much, but if we do look at them, it does corroborate my view that it is competitive. I think a lot of rating services are fair to say that this is a lean and Democratic race, but I certainly think that this is a race that could flip to the Republicans. I actually think there's a better chance of this race flipping than races like Michigan and even races like Minnesota. This is certainly a race that could flip to the Republicans, and I think that at the end of the day, there's a very good chance of that. But as of now, I am going to put it at the tilt Democratic. And then this may be my biggest hot take of my prediction. I am going to put Pennsylvania as tilt Republican. Now, if you look at the polls, you look at a lot of this media coverage, you'd think Republicans are dead in this race. You think that Doug Mastriano is the worst candidate and that they're never going to win this race. They lost in 2014. They lost in 2018 by double digits. They're not going to win in 2022. Well, I think that Doug Mastriano is not a good candidate, and Republicans have had their opportunities squandered over the years in these races. I think that the strength of this year for the Republicans is going to just carry them over the line as of now in my prediction. Now, tilt, as I said, could go either way, and I have it as tilt for the Senate race as well, meaning both of these races could go either way, but I just cannot in good conscience say that Democrats are favored in a race where Biden won by 1 percentage point here, and this is a very nationalized race, so I think you're going to have less of a effect that you see in a lot of other states where candidates can win in states that don't necessarily match their partisanship, like we saw in Kentucky in 2019, like we saw in Kansas in 2018, like we're going to see in Vermont and New Hampshire in 2022. I think you're going to have less of that effect in 2022 in the state of Pennsylvania here. And that is going to help Republicans, I think, because they're going to have a good year overall. They've done well in registrations lately. I think they're good in terms of the generic ballot, in terms of turnout, in terms of a lot of other factors. And even though Doug Mastriano is a bad candidate, I think right now he is just slightly, and I mean slightly, favored. But I do believe Democrats are favored in the state of Maine. Maine is the state where you've got Janet Mills, the incumbent Democratic governor, running against Paul LePage, former Republican governor, who never got over 50% of the vote, but he did run in 2 years that were solid for Republicans. But 2022, it's going to be a very, very interesting race here. And it's a similar thing. I just cannot, in good conscience, say the Republicans are favored in this race as of now. I do not feel comfortable with making that flip prediction as of now. But that does not mean Republicans cannot flip this race. I think they have a very, very good shot at it. They're running probably the best candidate they could have run. They're doing quite decent in terms of a lot of these fundamentals. It's going to be a good year for them, and I think that they certainly have a chance to win it. Whether that materializes will become more clear over the next couple of months, but as of now, I am going to put it as tilt Democrat. So overall, we've got 20 Democrats and 30 Republicans flipping the state of Nevada, as well as the state of Wisconsin, and Democrats flipping the state of Massachusetts and the state of Maryland. Republicans also flipping the state of Pennsylvania. But this is a very, very interesting map here. I think there's going to be a lot of competitive races, more than we've seen in quite a while, and it's going to make for a very interesting and fun election that I'll continue to analyze as it gets closer. And by the day I'm recording this, we're actually 100 days till the midterm, so it's not too long now, just over 3 months, but I will stay covering it, stay predicting it, and I hope you continue to watch. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.